I'm just going to go ahead and bring Randy up here and let him go ahead and get started talking. Randy's a longtime friend of the conservative movement. In fact, when I got involved 10 years ago, Randy was a state senator, and that's when Amanda would take me up to the Capitol, and Randy would give us a bill, and we'd say, okay, who do we need to work on? And he'd circle who we needed to work on, and we go and start talking to legislators about certain legislation. So,
we always had different approaches, too.
Yeah, we did. Amanda and I, we make a great tag team because it's kind of like good cop, bad cop. But Amanda would have to go, okay, now that's Tulsa 912. This is okay, safe, so that they wouldn't get ruined. Because I have a completely different method. I'm sure you guys have realized that. And mine's kind of upfront and in your face. And Amanda's real sweet, and she talks to you, and by the time she is finished, you're nodding your head and you're agreeing with her. So we do make a good team when we get out there together, though. And then Randy was running for governor. He started running for governor. And I can remember in one of the first meetings that we had as 912, I was asking for ideas of different people that we could have come and speak. And they said, well, why don't you ask Randy Brogdon? And I said, at that time, he's too busy. He's very important. And I don't know that he would have time to come and speak. So I reached out to Randy, and he was like, oh, yes, I'd love to come and talk. And that's when I realized that these guys put their pants on same way we do, one leg at a time. And they're human beings, and their job and their responsibility was to come and speak to us and to be accountable to us. And so I think that we as an organization have done a great job of trying to hold people accountable to what they're supposed to be doing. We can't make them do what we want, but we sure can call them out when they don't do what they should. So we've been through many episodes and fun stuff with Randy. We've helped him run for governor, and we helped him run for Senate, and we've helped him run for state GOP, and was successful. And unfortunately, the powers that be were ugly. And but I think Randy's where he wants to be, on the golf course most of the time, and taking care of his 3 grandchildren. I mean, you do a great job with taking care of his grandchildren. And if you're on Facebook and you like him, you get to see pictures of his grandkids. And I think he's got one that's already playing golf, isn't he? Yeah. So I think we're all familiar with Randy. And I want to tell you, I thank you for all the work that you do. And you keep us, you try to keep us straight, and you take a whole lot of crap from a whole lot of people, and I'm sorry that you have to do that, but I'm glad that you have the backbone to withstand it. So please join me in welcoming Senator Randy Brogdon.
Rhonda described the differences between her and Amanda, and my personality is more like Amanda's. I'm sweet and kind. Rarely will I get in your face about anything. I'm going to possibly unload this morning because there is such a disconnect with reality today, okay? And I'm going to frame an issue. I'm going to talk about abolishing abortion. I'm going to talk about pro-life legislation. I'm going to talk about the lack of moral and intellectual integrity at the state capitol. Now, on the way over here, I was thinking, okay, I don't really want to just offend everybody, today. But I realize that oftentimes the truth is piercing. And it's resisted when the truth pierces me sometimes. Ooh, that didn't feel very good. See, once you know the truth, you got to do something with it, don't you? I heard an advertisement of all things on the way over here, and I thought, that's awesome. I wish I'd have heard this about, and I probably have heard this commercial a dozen times. It's on Kubota tractors. We've all heard the young lady from Okmulgee doing her commercials, and she said, our entire business is driven by faith and measured by success. That's awesome. Driven by faith and measured by success. Now, what I'm getting ready to share with you today, you do not have to be a person of faith. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to be a Baptist or Assembly of God or Catholic. But if you have even a little bit of logic and intellect about you, my goal today is to help you understand the truth about the pro-life industry. It has become a gargantuan, hundreds of millions of dollars industry. And I'm going to tell you what it's done for the last 45 years, and then I'm going to hopefully share with you on how we can correct course. Now, I was your average, normal, everyday, off-the-shelf pro-lifer all my entire life, ever since I have even known anything about abortion. I'm a pro-lifer. I knew that pro-life was taking the life of a baby. I wasn't quite willing to say it was murdering a baby. I don't think up until 2 years ago I ever mentioned the fact that it was premeditated murder of a baby. Because I had people in my life, even when I was in the state Senate, that was telling me that, Randy, we need to pass some good pro-life bills that will limit how many abortions can be done. We need to limit when an abortion can be done. Most of you know that I probably back in, I think it's 2005 or 6, I passed a pro-life bill that Tony Lauinger encouraged me to pass. And that bill simply stated, it said, Mom could not have an abortion in the state of Oklahoma until she got an ultrasound. See, our hope and our prayer was, if that mom gets an ultrasound and she sees that little baby, she's not going to get an abortion. Now, here's what my bill really said. And I want to frame it this way because this is the truth. Had I written that bill that said, before a baby can be murdered, a mom would have to receive an ultrasound. Until a baby, as long as a baby is in the womb and hasn't reached 9 months of age yet, that baby can be murdered if the mom gets an ultrasound. Now, I want you to stop and think about this for a second. Had I written that bill, and that's exactly what my bill said, it was just in different terms. Had I written the bill like that, I would have been called the biggest pro-abortion supporter in the state of Oklahoma. You can have an abortion, you can murder your baby if you'll just get an ultrasound first. My God, how sick is that? Since 1972, we have authored, Christian, conservative, Republican legislators in every state in this union and in Washington, D.C. have authored pro-life legislation that sets boundaries when we can murder an unborn. My eyes were open to this 2 years ago. I was just a pro-lifer. I've repented of my bill. I guarantee you my legislation, I have cried over it. While we sit here today, while Greg Treat stands at the state capitol and has another press release on why he's not going to hear Senate Bill 13, 15 to 20 babies will be legally murdered in Oklahoma today. Dear God, forgive us. What are we doing? How many Baptists do we have in here today? Did you see what the Southern Baptists said yesterday? They don't support the abolition of abortion. Why? Because they are afraid. Folks, let me tell you, God does not put fear in our hearts. Fear comes from somewhere else. And it's the devil where fear comes from. God doesn't put fear in our hearts. But they're afraid that it will, quote, overturn all of the hard work that the Baptists and Tony Laulinger and the pro-life people, supporters for the last 45 years, afraid it would overturn all of that. Well, let me tell you what, that's the most disingenuous, sophomoric, disgusting lie I've heard this week. So we don't just have politicians now saying, well, we can't hear Senate Bill 13 because, and then they list the becauses. Now we have the Oklahoma Baptist General Convention, or whatever they're called, BOCO or something, fearful that it will expand abortion in Oklahoma if Senate Bill 13 is passed. Can you keep up with that logic? So I want to take you back a few years, and I got to frame this debate because what we've done over the last 45 years hasn't worked. 63 million babies have been legally murdered. Now, can anybody quote Roe v. Wade for me? I can't. I looked it up driving on the way over here today.
Don't say that on tape. Don't say that.
So I want to share with each one of you what Roe v. Wade was and is, even to today. It's a decision, or it's an opinion. It's not a law. It's not in the Constitution that we can legally murder babies. It is an opinion by the Supreme Court, ruled 7-2. By the way, the 7-2 Supreme Court was a Republican-appointed court. Did y'all know that? Wow. And we've had 6 Republican-appointed courts since Roe v. Wade was decided. We've had supermajorities, or not supermajorities in the House and Senate, but we've had some veto proofs, certainly in the House, Republicans. And for 45 years, we're told that, nothing we can do about it. Our leaders will tell us, hey, I'm pro-life. Vote for me. I'm not doing that anymore. Because when I vote for a pro-lifer here in Oklahoma, that means 15 babies will be murdered the next day. Nothing will change. The court ruled that a right to privacy, this is Roe v. Wade, their opinion. I want you to listen. I'm going to dissect this. And then I'm going to bring you full circle and challenge you to think, how in the world can our leaders say anything like they're saying today? Like, well, Senate Bill 13 is unconstitutional. The court ruled 7-2 that a right to privacy under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment extended to a woman's decision to have an abortion. Okay, made up out of whole cloth, no basis of anything, but that was their opinion. But that this right, now this is good, but that right to murder your baby is balanced against the state's interest in regulating abortion. Okay? So we got to be concerned about protecting women's health, protecting the potentiality of a human life. I guess the 7 justices that ruled this way thought that maybe when a woman's pregnant, it's a frog or it's in a toad.
Massive cells. They specifically didn't concern themselves with that.
That's right. But they ruled on the potentiality maybe it's a human life in there. So we really got to think this through before we murder a baby. We got to think about it. We got to balance it with the state. And they argued that the state's interest became stronger over the course of pregnancy. So what they do? They cut off abortion in the 3rd trimester. That's Roe v. Wade, period. Okay? So in today's debate, Senate Bill 13, we have a bill that says abortions will be criminalized in Oklahoma. That's what it says. There's, 15, 20 pages of all the legal stuff. But it says if you murder an innocent baby in the womb, it's a felony. It's a crime. And doctor, you'll be punished. Mom, if you make the decision with the facts in front of you, you'll be punished. If you're pregnant in Oklahoma today, state law says if you're pregnant, the mom is pregnant, and an armed robbery occurs, and that guy shoots the mom, whether it kills the mom or not, but let's say it kills the baby, that robber is charged with first-degree murder, unless it was a negligent homicide or something like that. But it's a felony. It's a crime. Yeah. So now, and I'm going to talk about New York here in a minute. And I'm talking about what we can do in Oklahoma. I can't fix New York State or California. We can fix Oklahoma.
We can.
We have the opportunity to abolish abortion in Oklahoma. And today we have our leaders, Greg Treat. We have the Southern Baptist Convention saying, well, we really can't do that because it's unconstitutional. Okay. Let's ferret that one out just for a second. Protecting an innocent life in the womb. We have state laws that say if you kill a baby in the womb, shooting it, hitting a woman in the stomach, whatever, and that baby dies, and if the mom dies, you're charged with a double homicide.
Yep.
Okay? But if we let a doctor go in and rip the baby apart in the womb, suck the brains and the spinal cord out in the womb, oh, that's just an abortion. There's nothing we can do about that. We're told it's constitutional. Dear God. Now, let me pause here for a second. Let's say in our Constitution, it says that if you're pregnant and you don't want that baby, and folks, this is what it's all about. It's never been about a woman's choice. It's never been about health care. It's never been about all of the things the pro-abortionists talk about, and unfortunately the pro-lifers talk about now. It's always been about getting rid of an unwanted child. And now in New York, they have carte blanche to do that. And we're this close to falling off the precipice right here in Oklahoma. I'm really measuring my words this morning. It may not sound like it, but I truly am, with what's happened at the state capitol this week. Even if the United States Constitution and even if the Oklahoma Constitution wrote in and said, if you're pregnant and you want to murder your baby in the womb, do it. It's okay. With impunity. No charges, no problem. You can do that. That law would be just as illegal as anything else. Law cannot be immoral. You get that? Law cannot be immoral. and the taking of an innocent life is immoral. And so even if the Constitution did say we can kill our babies, it would be up to every Oklahoman, every Christian, to buck up against that law and say, we're not going to kill babies in Oklahoma. Let me read something else to you real quick. I want you to know just exactly, and I'm not trying to pick on, I'm not trying to pick on the Southern Baptists. I should be picking on Greg Treat more than I do. I should be picking on Jason Smalley more than I do, because, and Greg Treat, he's the one holding it up. And Rhonda, I'll never forget. The short time I was chairman of the state Republican Party, Greg Treat called me in his office with self-righteous indignation and could not believe some of the things that I was doing, primarily hiring somebody with such a despicable relationship in their life. And he leaned back in his chair and he folded his arms. Senator Brogdon, I can't believe you'd have such a person working for the state party chair, representing, or in the state party, representing such despicable acts. I've got a wife. I've got 2 daughters. And I would hate to think that this is what the Republican Party stands for. Dear God, I would hate to think that this is what the Republican Party stands for today. If you got a baby, you don't want it. If the time is just right, you can kill that baby legally with impunity. That's where we are in Oklahoma. I wrote this yesterday, and I'm going to let you guys go and Google what Southern Baptist Convention said yesterday. It is beyond logic, common sense, moral, legal, spiritual, whatever you want to tag on that. It is beyond all of that. And my response to them was that the hypocrisy of the Oklahoma Baptist Convention as to why they can't support Senate Bill 13 to abolish abortion is astounding to me. The letter they sent out is a gross denial of God's word and a basic Christian belief. Never in my life have I ever heard a preacher say that we can't be against and we can't try and stop a particular sin because the court might not agree with us. Has any of your pastors ever gotten up and refused to preach against sin because, well, I don't know what the state Supreme Court might say about this one? You see, in Canada, you can't talk about certain sin from the pulpit anymore. Don't think it can't happen here.
That's right.
With a group of leaders that we have leading this state, they need to humble themselves. They need to turn from their wickedness. Decrees that are wicked and immoral and unrighteous need to be stopped. They don't feel like they have to. Premeditated murder of an unborn baby is sin at its worst. I can't think of anything more despicable. I know God probably doesn't rate sin. You know, here's the top 10. Although he did rate the top 10, didn't he?
Thou shalt not murder is one.
That's it. Baptist leaders know it, but they have chosen to engage in a despicable political posture rather than leading their people down the path of righteousness. Okay. Now, that's just from a small group of leadership in the Baptist church, okay? Don't get me wrong. Southern Baptists, they're the largest the largest group of Christians, and I have had so many calls and Facebook posts that says, I'm a Baptist. I don't believe that. I'm a Baptist. We need to end abortion in Oklahoma. See, that's what most logical thinking people, that's the conclusion they come up with. So I want to encourage you to go home today and just read why they did it, what their objections are, and let me just tell you right at the outset, their objections are without merit. Amen. Totally without merit. There is not one single reason that we should allow the murder of innocent preborn babies in the state of Oklahoma. If you think we should, you are on the wrong side of God's law and God's love. I can tell you that right now. Now, I don't want to get too preachy, but that's exactly how I feel. So let me share one other thing with you, and then can we do questions? Yeah. I want to go back to the 14th Amendment that I mentioned earlier. You know, that's how the Supreme Court ruled on due process, right to privacy, 14th Amendment. All right? Can anybody quote the 14th Amendment? I couldn't. I looked it up driving on the way over here today.
Not quoted, it's 3 paragraphs long.
I got a lot done from Owasso to South Tulsa. No state, this is the 14th Amendment, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. Now, what are some of the key privileges? Well, we all have the right to what? Yeah.
Everything a free
Liberty.
man has.
And so no state shall abridge those privileges. No court can say, well, no, everybody except this set of citizens. You know, there was a time when our Constitution said black people were 3/5 human, basically. There was more that went into that, but that was what we believed. There was a time in this country wherein it was legal to imprison Japanese American citizens born and raised here. Put them in prison camps in the United States. Supreme Court said that's fine. 14th Amendment says, no, that's not fine. So the Supreme Court has taken the 14th Amendment when it says specifically, you can't do this. And the 9 black-robed gods in Washington, D.C. said, according to the 14th Amendment, we can't abridge the right of any citizen. So if this mommy wants to murder her baby, get after it. But let's balance that a little bit. I mean, that sounds a little radical. Let's just balance that with maybe we ought to cut that off at the 3rd trimester. So I'll end with this. My eyes were opened about 2 years ago to the diabolical, sinful nature of pro-life legislation. And if you're a pro-lifer, I'm praying that you become an abolitionist. I'm praying you search your heart, you search the words that I'm sharing with you today, you search the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, but you better primarily search the Word of God. Jesus himself said, don't let my little kids suffer because they're a gift from heaven. Today, 15 babies will be legally murdered because of the legislation that I wrote. As long as they get an ultrasound, Mommy, you can murder that little baby. Dear God, forgive me for writing that legislation. Dear God, forgive the Baptist leaders, forgive the leaders in the state of Oklahoma while they're holding press conferences and politically posturing themselves in front of the camera to tell us what a great job they're doing. For the leaders of pro-life, and I'm praying for Tony Lawinger. I have been for several months. And Ron, I can tell you, the prayer that I pray for Tony is, dear God, please let Tony be blinded to the truth. Don't let him know the truth and ignore it. That's a dangerous place to be. There's no way. There is no way. I can't even remember how I thought that it was, well, it's just an abortion, okay, yeah. I don't understand how that got into my psyche and into my soul. But I tell you what's in my psyche and my soul now. It is to end abortion in the state of Oklahoma. We have a supermajority House. We have a supermajority Senate. We have a Christian brother that is the governor of this great state. I go to church with Kevin. Yet today, 15 babies will be murdered while we're playing politics at 23rd and Lincoln. It is despicable beyond my comprehension. I don't even have the words to tell you how I really feel about it. But we do have an opportunity to stop it, and I pray that we do this year. With that, I'll end, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can. Peggy?
Oh, hang on. This is my exercise.
Thank you. I don't really have a question, but I have several thoughts. Okay. My eyes were open to the pro-abortion or pro-life movement when Langford got on the Senate and gave this big speech and blubbered and cried and carried on about how terrible Planned Parenthood was, and then 2 days later voted to fully fund it.
Exactly. Yep. I agree.
But the parallels between the abolition of slavery and the abolition of abortion are striking.
They are.
Remember, the Supreme Court ruled in the Dred Scott decision that a black man wasn't a human, basically.
Yep, that's right.
Remember, the court is made up of 9 mortal people.
Yeah.
And they make mistakes, and they're not perfect in any way.
Right.
And it took the abolition of slavery to overturn the Dred Scott decision.
Yeah.
The parallel between that and abortion is just so striking.
Right.
Just because 9 justices said killing a child in the womb is legal does not make it right. And we're at the same crossroads today that we were in 1860.
Yeah, I agree.
We're repeating the same process. And in both cases, the Supreme Court totally ignored the basic tenets of our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
So you can't ignore the basic tenets that you're built on and make a ruling and expect it to stand.
No.
The other thing I want to say is this. Pregnancy is not a terminal disease. It is a normal human function.
Sure.
If a woman has a child she doesn't want, the state has made provision for her to give up that child without penalty, and there are hundreds of families waiting to adopt a baby. There's no reason abortion is really unnecessary. If it's truly an inconvenience to you, then give your baby up, let someone else cherish that child and raise it. And we have to do something different. We have to change this. This is not.
And we do have to change it, and we have an opportunity to change it this year. Donna.
This morning I saw on a crawler going across Channel 6, and I just caught part of it. It said something about Oklahoma maybe passing a trigger abortion thing. I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is, but I can guarantee you it's a pro-life bill that will allow for the continuation of murder of preborn babies. I hadn't heard of it, but let me tell you. And if you don't believe what I'm getting ready to say, well, go check it out. You can Google this and find it out very quickly. Not one single pro-life bill that's ever been passed. I'm going to talk about Oklahoma now. This is true for most other states. Not one single pro-life bill that's been passed in Oklahoma under the supervision of Tony Lowinger and the Baptist Convention and all the wonderful leaders that we have in the state capitol. Not one bill has ever passed to outlaw abortion. Every single bill says you can murder your baby if. There are 11 pro-life bills on the docket at the Capitol right now. But you know what? They're having a hard time getting out of committee. You know why? Because we have exposed, we've shined the light. When some lady or a guy comes up to you and says, hey, I'm going to run for the state Senate, I'm going to run for the House, and I'm pro-life, I'm Christian. I said, whoa, I'll never vote for another pro-lifer. So you mean you're wanting to keep the murder of babies legal in Oklahoma? We need to start asking those questions. What are you doing to end abortion? You see, we abolish babies. It's time that we abolish abortion in this state.
Yeah, that's true.
Sir.
Hang on.
You briefly touched on the economics of abortion. Could you elaborate?
I'm sorry, say it again.
The economics of abortion?
Yeah, the economics of abortion. How do you think Planned Parenthood stays in business? It's money. How do you think pro-life politicians get elected every year for being pro-life? Pro-life lobbyists gather money from like-minded people, and then they elect pro-lifers that will maintain the status quo. You see, it's literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that pour into the pro-life, whether it's the National Right to Life, whether it's the Oklahomans' Right to Life. There are numerous organizations around this country, and even right here in the state of Oklahoma, that profit. Now, think about this. And I'm not trying to beat up on Tony or anyone else that's been in this pro-life movement for 45 years. They take such offense when I talk like this, and I get that, because 3 years ago, I would have argued with you. No. My bill saves lives. How many? I don't know. But you know what I do know? 15 babies will be legally murdered today in Oklahoma. And there's no cause for it, no reason for it, except we have built an industry that regulates abortion, and not one bill has ever passed in Oklahoma that will eliminate abortion.
Does that Senate Bill 13 actually end it?
Yes. It
Clearly, very clearly and
yes,
unequivocally.
Clearly, unequivocally, what it does, it criminalizes abortion. If you commit murder, it's a felony in this state. Rape is a felony in this state. Robbery is a felony in this state. Now, there are different levels of murder. We know that. There's manslaughter. You know, that means you accidentally murdered somebody. There's negligent homicide. You know, you ran into them in an intersection. Well, you didn't go set out that morning to run a red light and kill a family of four, but you did. That's a felony. And I mentioned earlier, you shoot a pregnant mom and kill the baby, it's a felony. But if a doctor aborts the baby, well, that's just an opinion that we have to live with.
Thank you, Randy, for doing this. But to your point that nothing has been done with all the pro-life, quote-unquote, pro-life bills to actually end abortion in the state. It took a while to figure this out. But one thing I challenged or asked Tony about when I was at the Capitol several years ago, I always advocated put a link to the bill in your newsletters or your calls to action so that the people you're asking to make the phone calls can actually go read the bill. So I asked him, because Oklahomans for Life never puts the link to the bill in their missives. Right. So I asked him about that, and he said, well, we don't want to confuse people.
Sure.
And I said, in his very nice, deprecating manner. So then I said, okay, but it would be nice, you know, for them to be able to learn to read or check it for themselves. And he said, they have come to trust us.
Yeah.
So nobody's actually read the pro-life bills. The supporters are. Now, I'm challenged the wisdom in saying going at pro-life, because a lot of the people have never read the bills that
Right.
they've been calling about, and they truly are pro-life in the understood meaning of it,
That's right.
not the corrupted meaning of it.
Exactly.
To your point that we've never done anything, if you go to the Oklahoma Senate website or get Greg Treat's newsletters about what the Oklahoma Senate is doing, and you can sign up and get those in your inbox. On their latest newsletter is a little flyer, would be in color, about the Oklahoma Senate Republicans, the fight for life, right? And it's a little flyer with list of bills that they have passed that are right to life. Sorry. So this is a long question.
Okay.
This is it's like David Arnett. Okay. But so one of them, the top one there is Senate Bill 30 that they passed last year, right?
Okay,
So
I'm not familiar.
well,
What is it?
I had to go look it up. To your point here, all it is about putting additional words on a sign inside the facility that
exactly.
provides
Yeah.
an abortion that says there are public and private agencies willing and able to adopt your kid if you choose to go along with the
Yeah.
if you choose to keep your child. It doesn't tell them where they have to put the sign in the room, so it could be up behind the door with very tiny print. All right, but that's their idea of a pro-life bill. There's words added to a sign inside the abortion clinic that you're getting the abortion. All right, that's what they call their pro-life bill. That's the top bill listed here on their little flyer.
Right.
That bill, if you listen to Tony Launger at Terra meeting, inside, this is, I think, part of their other heartburn with Senate Bill 13, is it's repealing a lot of laws that would no longer be necessary for them to be on the books.
Right.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Senate Bill 13 repeals the title of law that is Senate Bill 30
Right.
changed right there. So their objection is you're kind of exposing it because we don't need those laws because they're actually, I mean, it was a sign.
Yeah.
It was just a sign on a wall.
Right.
So why would you object to that being repealed? Because you don't need it now because there won't be a facility providing the abortion.
That's right.
But they don't want that. And I think this is really beginning to reveal, if you go read what is being repealed and actually read it, it's just what Randy has said, is that they're nonsense.
Yeah.
They're really just tiptoeing around but we're getting this pro-life bill right here, which has all been a big charade.
And vote for me because I'm pro-life.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amanda.
So, Randy, you talked about your bill that you wrote and you've repented of. Have you considered that your bill was actually unconstitutional if murdering a child is actually a right? Causing people to jump through hoops to exercise a right is unconstitutional. So, I have never heard anybody mention this, not from the abolitionist side, but the game plan of the pro-life from the get-go, from the jump, from Roe v. Wade was, we're going to regulate it to death. That's what they said. It was very open. And the thing is that all of those regulations have never been constitutional if what the Supreme Court said was valid. Not one. Otherwise, well, anyway, have you ever considered that?
Ask me the direct question, because
Have you considered that your bill making people jump through hoops was unconstitutional as well?
yeah, well, that's what broke my heart. Literally broke my heart when I realized that my bill allowed for. This is the best way I can describe it.
I'm talking about it. It's out of the box thinking.
Well, I'm not sure I'm even following the question. I can tell you that the Constitution does not allow for the murder of a baby. Okay?
We understand.
Okay. So when you hear Senator Treat and the leaders up there saying that, well, I can't support Senate Bill 13 because it's unconstitutional. That's what they're saying. It's unconstitutional. Oh, really? And you know what? I did take time. I got up early this morning and I reread my little Constitution.
Not on the way here?
No, I had to do this at home. I actually read this. Maybe I missed something. Maybe it is in the Constitution to where we can murder babies. What did I miss? Folks, it's not in there. And I don't care how you twist it, how you phrase it. It is an immoral, unconstitutional, despicable act against the most innocent among us. So that's the best way I can answer that. That may not have been what you're looking for, but
In Arkansas, they just passed a law. Did you see
I
that?
heard it. Yeah.
And I was kind of not understanding it. It's their they're going to make it where it's illegal to have an abortion if Roe versus Wade is done away with.
Yeah.
Well, what does that do now?
Okay, and that's what Greg Treat has finally settled on yesterday. I don't know if y'all read the Tulsa World this morning. There's one reporter in the entire state of Oklahoma that's reporting on accurately on Senate Bill 13. It's Barbara Hobrock. She wrote the article this morning, and the headline said, Southern Baptist Convention do not support abolishing abortion in Oklahoma. Wow. And then she laid it out. She laid out what they said, what Greg Treat says. And so Greg Treat now, because he's on a hot seat, because we kind of moved off of Smalley. We got a bunch of billboards up in Oklahoma City with Greg Smalley's face up there saying, I'm pro-life. Let's murder the babies. That's what he's saying. So the Arkansas bill itself is saying, you know what? If Roe v. Wade is overturned, we're going to have a bill in place where we can outlaw abortion in Arkansas. Okay, let's follow this thing through. Yeah, well, let's follow this through just a little bit. I read Roe v. Wade to you, what it said. I assure you, those 9 black-robed justices, they're not justices, but they're not sitting there in their rooms and offices thinking, you know what? We ought to offer another opinion on Roe v. Wade, and let's overturn that today. It has to be challenged. Right. Somebody has to take it to the court. It's exactly what Senate Bill 13 would do. It would work its way up to the Supreme Court, and here's what I say about that. I don't care. Right. I don't care what the Supreme Court says. The Supreme Court could come back and say, you know what, we looked at that Senate Bill 13, and it just violates what we said back in 1972. So, no, you still have to murder babies. You got to put everything in place to murder babies in Oklahoma. We just can't go there with you. In the bill, there is explicit language, severability language, that addresses, well, what if, Amanda, what if we get this bill passed and we repeal all of those other bills and, it doesn't pass, but what it does, it repeals all the other pro-life bills, but we still allow abortion? Now we can't protect fetal pain. Now we can't wait till a heartbeat. Now we can't do it past the second trimester. All of those are repealed, but abortion still remains legal because the court says the state of Oklahoma will not spend one dime in a federal court. The federal court has no jurisdiction over Oklahoma state criminal law. Never has and never should be. Never will. Sir.
Wrap it up. I think everybody in the room who was pro-life is leaning toward abolitionist. If you're not an abolitionist yet, you need to get on board. But for people on the left who just don't understand, it's not right to kill someone. I have found that I can ask them, well, if it has Down syndrome, can I kill it? What if I'm conservative and my child may be gay? Can I kill it then? And we can get some of these people on the left to see things our way. We can't just kill people for any reason. We're all humans, and if you can't get to the humanness of a friend who's a liberal, that these people, you think all these people deserve rights. What about this last bastion of people that we are allowed to kill, the unborn?
Yeah.
Who will speak for them? You'll stand up and tell us we can't harm our dogs. We've outlawed rooster fights. We're saving whales. But this human we're going to allow to die. And I think
Yeah.
if Oklahoma will be the first to do this, these liberal-leaning states will start to see the folly of our way.
Yeah, thank you. And and I'm not even talking to pro-choice people. I mean, I don't. That's not my audience. I'm not trying to persuade them. I'm not going to argue with them. My beef is with pro-lifers, and I can say that with a clean conscience because I'm 65 years old, and until 2 years ago, I was a pro-lifer. Until I learned the folly of my ways, until I learned the hypocrisy of what I believed. And so, and I've had some of my friends, when I talk like this, Randy, you'd probably gain a lot more abolitionists if you would just tone down your rhetoric. You need to be just a little kinder. And I don't like the way you presented it today. You've offended me. Well, get over it.
I have a comment about that. If you believe like I do, and you may not, but I believe that a child in the womb is without sin. I believe a child has a clean slate. So to me, every time a child is aborted, in a way, we are re-crucifying Christ.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Hang on, one more, and then we'll wrap up.
I understand the reasons for lobbying Senator Treat and Senator Smalley, but at a point, everyone recognizes that the Senate President pro tem has a whole lot of executive discretion to call up bills for a vote on the floor and so forth. But doesn't he only exercise that executive discretion in the absence of the Senate President? And I haven't heard much talk at all about folks encouraging people to contact the President of the Senate. And I've heard the President of the Senate say that he supports Senate Bill 13. And the only reason we have right to work in Oklahoma is because while the Senate was still controlled by Democrats and they would not allow a right to work bill to pass out of committee, the Senate President, Mary Fallin, in her finest hour, I believe, went into the chamber, went on the floor of the Senate, demanded the gavel, and called for a vote on the right to work bill, and it passed. And I don't understand, at this point, this is getting kind of late, in the day here. Well, not to pass from the Senate. I think the deadline for bills to advance from the floor, from the House of Origin, is March the 14th. But the days are ticking by. I was wondering, have you contacted the President of the Senate and asked him to exercise his discretion to call this bill up for a vote on the floor of the Senate?
Yeah, and the President of the Senate that he's referring to is the Lieutenant Governor, Matt Pinnell. Matt Pinnell's another believer in Christ. As I mentioned, our governor is a believer in Christ. The governor even said if Senate Bill 13 makes it to his desk, he would sign the bill. Governor Stitt, I challenge you to take it a step further. Don't just wait for that bill to come to your desk. I'm asking you to be proactive, and you talk to Senator Treat, and you get that bill to your desk. That's what needs to happen. I've not personally talked to Matt about it, not in the last few months. Before he was elected, we talked about abolition quite a bit. And I agree. I think Matt, from my conversations with him, he would love to end abortion. Now, you're sticking your neck out. So, why be in a position of authority and power if you're not willing to stick your neck out? And we just ask him to do the right thing. Just do what's right. Everybody just do what's right.
Well, and you have.
Huh?
It always takes each of us to repent for what we've done.
Yeah.
We've always, we live in this world. And so because there's influence and we know the principalities that are here and we battle those principalities. So what we say is we want to be the ones to stand for the blood guilt. And that's blood guilt. And if we truly want healing for America and for our nation, then we stand up and we repent, like you said. Yeah. I'm sorry for what I've signed. I stand for what I've done. And we move forward on this. But there's a gray matter here, and the gray matter is a dissension to allow murder. And that is it, hands down, black and white. So when we allow these children, these girls that are young, to come in that have no idea what they're going to do, but you give them a choice. We've given them a choice. God didn't give us a choice.
Right.
And so the blood guilt has been on our hands to open that up, to say, okay, we'll allow you to have a choice. And so we have a choice to tell the truth and say that we're sorry that these things have happened, but we want to change, and we want to go back to the nation's standard of, in God we trust. We trust your values, Lord. We'll stand on them, and we don't want this to happen anymore. So forgive us for what we've done, and forgive us for what we've allowed. But we're asking you to free us from this bondage. And that's really where it's going to begin, because God says it begins with our children.
Yep.
And that we're supposed to humble ourselves and come like a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
All righty.
You know, and let me just make one final comment,
ahead.
and then I'll give it back to you. But I know me.
I appreciate our honesty.
Well, and I know where I was. And now, a lot of mine was just, I was blinded to the truth, not on purpose. I was deceived. What I thought I was doing good was actually promoting evil. Wow. I went to my knees when I got that. So there are a lot of my friends and a lot of pro-lifers that take great offense to what I'm saying, because they've been in the trenches for 45 years. They have got all these pro-life bills passed, and Brogdon, you are trying to undo everything that we've done for the last 45 years. I say, you bet you I am, because it's time we abolish abortion.
That's right.
Quit nipping around the edges and fetal pain, heartbeat, and I mean, I believe that when God breathes His breath in every single one of His creation, us. It's God's breath. How can we have so much pride and dignity and understanding that the little people probably don't get, that at the right time, just the right moment, with just the right reason, with the right tools, we can take one of God's creation. We are walking on dangerous ground, folks, when we get that in our mindset. Pro-life started out doing a good thing. 2 years, not even 2 years, after pro-life jumped in the fray after Roe v. Wade and they fought against abortion. You know what they did? We started adopting pro-abortion phrases. Well, it's the law of the land. Where is that the law of the land? The court can't make law. How is abortion the law of the land? How can you take the 14th Amendment and turn it upside down and say, this is why we have to allow abortion? My gosh, how far we have fallen. So anyway, Rhonda, thanks for
we thank
letting me be here.
you. We
You
really
bet.
do. And we thank you for the fight.
Yeah, thank you.
We thank you for opening our eyes. You know, I too was pro-life. I think that I think we all have stories, and I think we all need to tell our stories. And I'm gonna end with part of what our story is in our family. In the 1930s, my grandmother married a man that was above her station in life, yes. And her family, and his, yeah, exactly. Well, his family wasn't very happy about it, and my grandmother was pregnant. And they took her to a hospital to have an abortion in the 1930s. And my grandmother cried all night long, and she was really emotional about all of this. And the next day when they came to pick her up, the doctor told the family, we're not doing anything with her because she's too emotional. And so my grandmother packed her bags and she moved back home with her family, which happened to be a boxcar in Shawnee, Oklahoma, where my great-grandmother prepared food for the railroad workers. My mother was born in the back of that boxcar. Had my grandmother had an abortion, my mom wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. My 7 children wouldn't be here. And my 18 grandchildren wouldn't be here. And that is the effect of one abortion. So we have a responsibility to fight and to protect them, to protect the unborn. We've lost what, over 40 million? 65 million in over 40 years. That's right. And my complaint to the pro-life movement is it's time. It's 45 years. You keep nipping away at things, but it's not making any difference. Heck, we've got people aborting at full term now. And so I just encourage you. I encourage you to call Senator Treat, to write him, be very respectful. But we can push to get this heard, and we need to use whatever means is necessary. And now I can't breathe, so yes, Amanda.
Thank you for that, by the way. I just want to encourage people, the sessions are 2 years long, so we actually may be in a 2-year battle here. Don't give up if it doesn't get heard this year. Keep pushing, but we have a 2-year session, so that bill's still going. So this is a long battle, but we don't lose heart, and we don't get discouraged.
What's Matt Pinnell's email?
I don't know, but I'll get it for you. Matt Pinnell's email, yes.
I just want to get clear on the limit. We have up until the middle of March to keep sending an email a day to Trick.
Yes, Treat. Yes.
I've already sent one while we were sitting here.
I say we contact them and let them go. And listen, we told our stories. Lori and I went up there a couple of weeks ago and sat with different senators. Lori has a completely different story than I do. Okay. Number one, I'll tell you that I've experienced. I've given a child up for adoption. I was just recently reunited with that child. Lori, on the other hand, and my child that I put up for adoption was number one. He was my number one child, the first one. Lori comes from a family with 6 children, and I'm telling your story, Lori. Lori was put up for adoption. She was the number 6 child. Her mother told her siblings that had abortion been legal, she would have aborted every one of them. Lori is here by the grace of God, because had abortion been legal, her mother wouldn't have had her. We all have stories. We all have stories. We have to let our stories be heard. We have to let them know what the emotional outcome is from a woman having an abortion. And that, yes, God will forgive you, but the hardest thing is learning to forgive yourself. And there are a lot of hurt women out there that did what they thought was right at the time and are having to live with that now. And they need our prayers. But we all have a story, and people need to hear our stories. And with that, I say thank you, and God bless.